Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dennis Assanis, and I feel greatly honored to be serving as the president of the amazing University of Delaware. And on behalf of our great university, I want to welcome all of you to this very exciting panel that we have today. I want to especially welcome Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. Let's give Lisa a hand. And several of the university trustees and other dignitaries that we have with us today. Thank you all for coming. The University of Delaware is proud to host the Biden Institute, which is sponsoring today's discussion on race, gender, and politics. We have with us the authors of the new book, a sort of Bible, I might say, for colored girls who have considered politics.
You want to touch it?
So good to have the Bible and also to have the Reverend with us to bless us. You know, this is really great.
That's funny.
So this already promises to be a very interesting discussion because the topic of their book is incredibly important in our society today. For too long, certain segments of our population have been marginalized and ignored, especially in politics. As our panelists know too well, women and people of color have often been treated differently and held to different standards. That's a serious issue for our society. The women who are joining us today are trailblazers. You see them. Throughout their careers, they've exhibited perseverance, courage, insight, leadership, and passion to open doors and challenge the status quo. What an honor it is for us to have them with us today to explore the impact of race, gender, and politics on opportunity. Our nation indeed is facing incredibly complex challenges related to the economy, the workplace, healthcare, the environment, national security, and so many more. There is no shortage of problems to be solved. In our search for answers, we must embrace the contributions of everyone with the shared goal of making progress possible. History has revealed the power of women time and time again, and events like this reminds us all of the leadership and promise that women bring to the future of our community, our country, and our world. And on a personal note, I've known way too well about women of power from my wife, Eleni, who is here in the audience today.
Right.
Hey.
That's funny.
One of the best ways to contribute your ideas and to make a difference is indeed through politics. Joe Biden often says that politics can be a noble profession and that good public policy is the key to creating a better society for everyone. The Biden Institute at UD is all about the strength of public policy, and we're very fortunate the Institute is able to bring such amazing speakers to our campus for discussions like the one we're having today. So let me introduce our guests for our panel today. It is truly a panel of distinguished women who have lived and worked behind the scenes in politics for over 30 years, helping to shape our nation's history. We have Donna Brazil, who is a longtime Democratic political strategist.
Thank you, sir.
She's an adjunct professor at Georgetown University, an author, a TV commentator, and former interim chair of the Democratic Party. We have Yolanda Caraway, founder of the Caraway Group. A nationally recognized public relations firm that has helped shape the goals and objectives of the Democratic Party for more than 30 years. We have the Reverend Leah Daughtry, a nationally recognized pastor, speaker, organizer, political strategist, and CEO of both the 2008 and 2016 Democratic National Conventions. And we have, last but not least, Minyon Moore, a partner of the Dewey Square Group. and former CEO of the Democratic National Committee, Assistant to the President of the United States and Director of the White House Office of Public Liaison, and Director of White House Political Affairs under President Bill Clinton. Moderating today's discussion is distinguished UD alumna Valerie Biden Owens,
Yay!
Yeah.
who certainly knows her way around politics and managing campaigns. She has won a few, 2, 3, 4. So she's a political strategist who managed every one of her brother Joe's campaigns, and we're proud that she's the vice chair of the Biden Institute. So let's welcome everybody, and Valerie, it's now on to you.
I'm good? So hi.
Hi.
We have a mighty powerful set of women up here, and it is my privilege to welcome you to the Biden Institute special council here with all of my brand new friends.
Wait a minute. I thought you and I have been friends for 30 years.
Well,
Did you drop me?
No,
I'm not getting
you
any
know,
love?
I was just trying to not be a 5th grade girl like I like you best, you know? So I was just trying to even the playing field here. Okay, for colored girls who have considered politics, this book is just what it says it is. It's about 4 individuals from different backgrounds, and each one of them believed that she had the capacity and the commitment to make a difference. Like all women, they do not represent a monolith. Each is a force unto herself, but together, I'm telling you, they are one hell of a tsunami. The book is about politics, and we'll get to that later, but it's also about personal relationships. It's about friendship and sisterhood, and particularly Black sisterhood. So I want to start with that, and my first question, or a series of 2 of them, is how did the 4 of you come to know each other? How does the role of sisterhood play in your relationships? And lastly, how do you strengthen and maintain that relationship as in chapter 24? So let's take it as you...
She went there.
Yeah, I went there. So who wants to start?
I'll start. I think Donna and I were the first ones to meet each other back in the early 80s. I worked for Barbara Mikulski when she was a congresswoman, and Donna was in Washington galvanizing support for the Martin Luther King holiday. I happened to be in my little cubicle of an office one day. I had a very low-level job. They get mad at me because I say that, but it really was. We were called the robo-operators, but we answered all the correspondence to the congresswoman. And one day I was sitting in my cubicle, and someone came in and asked if I wouldn't mind going out and meeting with a young woman who came by and wanted to discuss something with the congresswoman. She wasn't there, so they asked me to do it. And I could not figure out why in the heck would they ask me to go meet with somebody. So I said, sure, why not? So I went out, and the place was so small, the space was so small, we had to meet in the hallway. And I saw Donna, and as soon as I saw Donna, I understood why they asked me to meet with her. But anyways, that was our first meeting, and we became friends after that, and that's been 30 years ago, at least.
Yeah.
Go ahead, because you were
Sure.
in good trouble. Mm-hmm.
See, I always have to ask Minyon
freaking
permission because she says I filibuster.
She does.
She does.
Stay tuned, you'll see.
All right. That's a great description. First of all, it's wonderful to be back here on this great campus and to be at the Biden Institute. I love Joe Biden. I've known Joe Biden for well over 30 years. He's
I'm
down.
more fun.
You
Joe
are.
Biden.
You are. But you know, I could tell y'all some Joe Biden story, but that would take a whole nother book.
Okay.
And they're great stories, but he's down in Florida helping Andrew Gillum. He is so amazing. Vice President is doing early voting, and he told me he was about to head to a church. He's also helping Bill Nelson, and I said, please tell the Lord thank you, because the flight I took today into Philadelphia, I had to call on, as I told Valerie, I had to call on the Lord, and then I started going to Jesus, and then I started saying Mary, and then like every good Catholic, I went to Saint, I had to go to all my saints. So thank you, St. Anthony, thank you, Lord, thank you, Mary, thank you, Joseph, but we're here. So as you can see, I have an affinity for the Lord, and I met Leah Daughtry, her father, back in 1980 when I traveled from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to the House of the Lord Church, because her father was hosting a rally in a long day event, Forward Together, Backwards Never. It was a great empowerment summit, and I drove with 3 people from Baton Rouge. We drove nonstop. We only stopped for gas. We didn't stop for food because honestly we didn't have enough money for food. But once we got there, Leah's mother and father and her family treated us well, and we got ourselves together. So I've known her for a long time. Now Minyon and I, although we both worked for Reverend Jesse Jackson in the 1980s, I did Jackson 84 along with Yolanda and Leah, and Minyon came along in Jackson 88. It wasn't that she was young and wasn't ready for the moment, but she was doing other important work back at Push Rainbow. We met at the caucus campaign one day when I was on strike, and I'll let Minyon take it from there.
So,
I was on strike.
I thought she was going to you. Go ahead.
so what happens during a general, you get dispatched. The losers always have to go work for the winners, the victors. So I was working for Jesse Jackson's campaign, so I went to Boston to be the deputy field director. So I was excited about this because this was going to be my first opportunity to really work with Donna. We had worked past each other, but we hadn't worked with each other. So me, like a dutiful sister, I get there and I called Donna on the phone and I say, hey Dee, I'm here, where are you? She goes, I'm on strike. So I'm like saying to myself, well, shoot, how you going on strike on a campaign? So I'm trying to figure this stuff out. Okay, she's on strike. The campaign is still going on, but she's on strike. So I say, well, what are you on strike for? They wouldn't give me my money. She talks in like very short sentences until you get the complete picture. So she finally said that she was trying to get $10,000 for the CBC dinner that weekend, and the Dukakis-Benson campaign refused to give it to her. So I'm saying to myself, okay, so you got to get that money so you can get back up in here so we can win this campaign. So how do we get the money? So she eventually got the money. And
yes.
So that was just the first set of troubles. The other second set of troubles will come later in the discussion.
But this is a good set of trouble because the title for Color Girls, that same season in Boston in 1988, the hierarchy of the campaign decided to move the quote-unquote senior staff to the 9th floor. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, all of us who were deputies, I was deputy, was I deputy political?
You're
political, Minyon was field director, Susan Rice was deputy policy director. There was a bunch of deputies who happened to be black or female or both in our case. And we noticed that there were no quote-unquote women or minorities going upstairs. So you know what we did during cocktail hours?
It wasn't our cocktail hour, it was their cocktail hour.
It was their cocktail hours. Yeah. But we went up to the 9th floor, we found an open office, and we scrambled around the tables and the chairs, we made room for everybody, and then we put a sign on the door, the Color Girls, we shall not be moved. So there you go.
So I'm the baby of the bunch. So I knew through my father's work on the Jackson campaign, and I did Jackson 84, and I first met Reverend Jackson when I was 6 years old. And he and my father was running Operation Breadbasket in New York, and that was the economic arm of the SCLC, and Reverend Jackson had come up to help us. We were in Brooklyn, and we were boycotting A&P supermarkets because they wouldn't hire black people. And so that's when I first met Reverend, and he seemed, just impossibly tall and this huge afro. And of course I was 6, so it was just, I kept just looking up. And so he was a part of our life and the life of our church and the life of our community and the life of our family for many, many years. So when he ran for president in '84, I was in college, I went to Dartmouth, and he asked me to sign on to his campaign and help to organize my part of New Hampshire. After the campaign was over, I went to Washington and I worked on Capitol Hill for Ed Towns, who was my hometown congressman and also a member of the CBC. And my father said, well, if you're going to go to Washington, you need to find out where Yolanda and Donna and Minyon are, because those are women who are doing something. And you need to find out what they're doing and align yourself with them and with their energy, because we don't know anything. I'm from a very activist, some people would call us radical community, and so there was not a lot of trust of Washington. So if you're going to go down there, then get with some people who have similar values to what you were raised with. So I went to work for Yolanda. I met her first after '88. After the '88 campaign, she was putting together the Rainbow Coalition, and my dad was chairing the Rules and Bylaws Committee. And so I would go with him to the meetings, and Yolanda was there running everything, and she was just this, impeccably dressed, so organized. She had the portfolio and, these suits and the best shoes. And it's like, oh, that's Yolanda. So when I was looking to get off the Hill, I went, and she was at the DNC. Ron Brown had been elected. And someone told me to go and interview with her, and that's how I got to the DNC and started working on the '92 convention. I had no idea how many conventions I would work on, but that was my first one, working for Yolanda. And then we picked up these two along the way.
Yeah. Stragglers.
Picked up these two.
These two stragglers. You all look like one big happy family, and you are. But like all families, everything isn't always smooth and, smooth sailing, and there are bumps in the road. And I could write another book about Joe, the bumps in the road of easy raising my older brother. But for you, tell me about how you managed to maintain or the, how this relationship has stayed together because of your what?
Well, first of all, you're in trouble when you no longer get emails. Somehow or another, they just drop you.
See, we talk to each other almost every day, but we email each other every day.
Every hour
So when you're in trouble, you get dropped from the email.
And see, we all travel a lot too. So normally we say going to Chicago, we'll be back. She didn't get any of those.
Not one.
For about 6 months.
That's true. They cut me off.
Because Donna wrote a book. What had happened was...
Right. Donna wrote a book.
Donna wrote a book called Hacks, and we knew she was writing a book. We thought she should write a book because she had been through a very difficult time as the interim chair of the DNC. She picked up during the convention, and it was nonstop attacks. Then there was the hack. It was a lot, and she took the biggest brunt, we thought, of all of the turmoil that was happening. She was unfairly accused. She was unfair. It was just bad, and so we were happy and really thrilled that she was going to get her story out there, so people would be able to understand all that was going on that they were not reading in the newspaper and what was affecting and impacting some of the decisions she made. So she was writing this book, but when the book came out,
it was a little different.
It was a little different from what we were expecting. And it led to some friction.
It was supposed to only be about Russia.
Yeah.
I thought maybe she had been talking to Sarah Palin. It's all about Russia.
Some articles
that she had written.
and Sarah Palin, and that's so when the book came out and we were reading, it's like, no.
We saw it when you saw it.
Right. So it led to some friction. And so she got dropped from the email chain for about 6 months.
I'm so glad I brought this up. I got a real knack.
Yeah, it was, let's just say it was a moment. I had an experience, I think, like no other human being the chair of a party when your country is being attacked by a hostile, foreign, aggressive military unit. I mean, I should not have been at the DNC. I should have been at the Pentagon trying to defend the country. And yet I found myself in this situation where I had to both lead the party through this amazing experience and at the same time deal with it personally. I got death threats. I mean, I got death threats when I was Al Gore's campaign manager, lived in Tennessee, but this was not the usual death threat. This came with people sending suspicious packages. It came with staff people being told that they were going to get raped that evening when they left. And it also came in the aftermath of the murder of Seth Rich, who happened to work in my department at the DNC because I served as vice chair for the party for over 7 years. And so in writing a book, it's just like when we're writing this book, which took a long time, you put the ingredients in your book that you think will tell the story. And when I decided to tell my story, I decided to tell it all.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, moving right along. You are self-described as daughters of the movement. And Leah, I know from reading that you said your parents seized the moment and turned it into a movement. What's that mean?
So this was that part of the book we're talking about. In the 1980s in Brooklyn, we were experiencing, not just in Brooklyn, but in New York City, we were experiencing a string of killings at the hands of the NYPD. So it was Clifford Glover, Claude Reese, Randolph Evans, Eleanor Bumper, Louis Baez, and the list just went on and on. It's like one every 6 months, it seemed like. And remember, this was before the internet. This was before cell phones, so we didn't have the advantage of social media that we have now. But as we were in conversation with people around the country, we learned that other cities were having the same issue. And so my father and some of his colleagues, G2 Weusi, Al Van, Sam Penn, banded together and said, this can't go on. And there has to be a community response to these killings. What are we going to do? And so they set aside their political ideologies and began to create this movement that eventuated into the Black United Front. And then as we established 38 chapters in 38 states around the country, it became the National Black United Front, and that's the convention that Donna attended. It was over 1,000 people from 40 states and 5 foreign countries that came to all with this same idea that there's gotta be a better way in our community. We cannot allow these kinds of, this abuse of authority, this abuse of power, to be meted out upon our community. So I watched the systematic building of a movement and what it took in those days, the phone calls. This was before answering machines. So if you didn't get somebody, you just had to keep calling them back. The driving, my parents would get in their car and drive across the country to meet with groups of activists, to meet with groups of elected officials, to meet with communities to say, what's happening here, where do we have similarities, and what can we build together? You in Philadelphia, and you in Oakland, and you in Portland, what can we build together? Because we're experiencing the same thing. We're all having the same kind of pain. And those meetings, the relationship building that was required, that's what today's, who remembers the mimeograph machine?
Yep.
With the blue ink,
Yep.
and you had to crank it up and make flyers. So we would call rallies in New York City, and 10,000 people would show up on a moment's notice. And if you got 10,000, it's because you touched 30,000.
Yeah.
And we were involved in all of these issues, including nuclear disarmament. Some of you will remember the big million-person march that happened around nuclear disarmament. That was my father's organizing. So I watched the seed of an idea, understanding the pain points, trying to create synergy among people who are experiencing similar pain and who have similar energy, and building it into a mechanism, into a movement that could change the face of how our communities were interacting with those in authority.
So you were in the movement. You started out, I believe, with Bobby Kennedy's Senate campaign. Is that correct?
I started out as a high school freshman, 14 years old, had a friend come up to me one day and said, why don't you come work with me and volunteer on Bobby Kennedy's Senate campaign in New York State? And, you know, I asked her a few questions, and I said, okay. I was always looking for something to do because I really didn't want to go home. So I would take the bus from the east side to the west side every day after school, and I went and I licked envelopes, I made phone calls, all the things you do working on a campaign when you're a volunteer. And by the end of the campaign, they actually sent me out to knock on doors because I kind of understood. For 14 years old, I could communicate the issues and what he really, you know, what he was trying to do. And when he won that campaign, you just thought that was it for me. I mean, I was totally bitten by the bug. I still have a letter, which I know was signed by an auto pen, but it hangs in my office today from Bobby Kennedy. And that was it for me. And I was just, you know, I wanted to be a psychiatric social worker because I wanted to help people. But I learned that there are different ways of helping people. And I think I found later on that this was something that I really enjoyed doing. I had good instincts, I was organized, and I loved it. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to make a living doing what you love to do.
Yeah. I know that you do have answers or stories about how you got involved, but I'd like to skip ahead because I'm looking at the time to ask a couple other questions. You women are bookended between Dr. King and Barack Obama, President Barack Obama. But when you look back in history, most of us who've read about the civil rights movement, it's all in the 1960s, and it's about Bobby Kennedy, it's about Malcolm X and Reverend Martin Luther King, and it's about President Johnson and Bobby Kennedy. But not for the four of you. Your focus on this book is Jesse Jackson.
Right.
And Jesse Jackson obviously did not win the presidential nomination, but you said he won a whole lot more. So will you talk about that?
Yes. I got involved in the night Dr. King was assassinated, 50 years ago this year. That was my impetus for getting involved in the movement. But it was also Shirley Chisholm campaign in '72 that made me realize that women too could take their seats at the table. When Reverend Jackson initially ran in 1984, he got involved in November of 1983. And by then, most of the states had already fulfilled their deadlines in terms of getting on the ballot. So we had to scramble to get Reverend Jackson on the ballot. So we learned how to not just play the rules, the existing rules, but eventually we would come to sit at the table and change those rules to ensure that every Democrat, everyone had access to the ballot. And Yolanda, working on the Fairness Commission, enabled us to get rid of winner-take-all primaries. We also had, we got proportional representation. So if you look at the thread from the time that Fannie Lou Hamer took her seat in '64, demanded to have her seat, Shirley Chisholm run in 1972, to Jackson, '84, '88, there's a straight line there to the election of our first black president 10 years ago, Barack Obama, because that work, that organizing, made that happen.
And out of Reverend Jackson's '88 campaign, there was the biggest prize we won was chair of the Democratic National Committee.
That's correct.
Ron Brown got elected chair.
Yeah. Minyon.
Yes.
There's a concept in the book that is attributed to you, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's inside women versus outside women, and you are the woman among the four who was the most inclusive and widened the circle for inside women versus outside women. What does it mean, and may I come?
Sure.
In the circle?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Valerie, you need to be on the outside with me. That's where all of the troublemakers are.
Yeah, so explain it to me.
No, actually, they actually make fun of me about this. I have this open door policy. I believe that everybody deserves a seat at the table. It doesn't matter. If you have the right values, I think you deserve a seat at the table. I also believe that, if you listen to people, most times you really get underneath what they're really thinking. And what I've learned over the years is people want to know that you see them, that you're listening to them, and that you care. And so Leah would say, what's that title you got? She got broken wing.
Every bird with a broken wing
Come to me.
finds their way to Minyon.
Yes. And it's true, but you know what, it's something, we laugh about it, but it's actually something that I'm extremely proud of, because I always believe, when we talk about inside-outside strategy, we've always believed that you have to have a network on the outside to help you push on the inside. Sometimes you can't be the voice that's at the front of the strategy, but you have people who believe in the same thing on the outside. So you just quietly pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, listen, we might be having a little bit of a problem, and the leader of this particular sector or party might need a little push. So we rely on the outside. But in terms of sisterhood, I think we have women all over the country that we believe in, whether they're Black, white, Hispanic, Native, Asian, and I think that came from our rainbow fabric. So we are very inclusive as it relates. And I know a lot of people listen to the title of the book as the Colored Girls, but we really like to believe that that's really about a value system. It's not about the color of your skin. If you're willing to sit at a table and you see something missing and you have the courage to speak up about it, then we call you a colored girl. If you're at the table and you're the only one and you know it should be somebody else and you don't say anything, you're not a colored girl. But if you are speaking up when it's uncomfortable, that makes you a colored girl. So that's our real definition of colored girl.
Okay, I hope we got a lot of colored girls in here. Leah, one of the paragraphs that I read in the book, it spoke about that your generation, your parents' generation, had to teach, I'm going to paraphrase this, had to teach their young Black children that there was a difference in America. And let me read what it says. That the parents told the young Black children that you have to work twice as hard because you're young Black children. And you have to do so because you are Black in America and you are competing in white space. Would you elaborate?
Well, you could hear from
Yeah, right, exactly. We were all taught this.
And by the way, have you seen any change in the dynamic today from what your parents told you to what parents are telling their children now?
Well, I think most Black people in America, there may be some exceptions, got that same talk. Work twice as hard, go in earlier, stay later, know your craft. You're going to have to be twice as good to be considered the same. And I think that's just the outgrowth of America's original sin, which is slavery. It still permeates the fabric of our country, unfortunately. And I think while we all struggle against it and fight to change the systems, the reality is it still exists in many, many spaces. And we know just from statistics, we're paid less.
Yeah.
Right? We have it takes us a longer trajectory. I was talking to some of the sisters in the CBC, and now there's this raging thing about whether there ought to be new leadership on the Hill. Should the new generation of leaders take the mantle? And the fact of the matter is, Black women enter politics later in life. So when you're talking about generational shifts, that means you're leaving out a bunch of folks who, because of the factors in America, don't get to the political table as early as some of their white sisters do. And so I think I think I still tell my nephews that. I have 3. I'm child free, thank you, Jesus. That was my decision. Feminism, you're supposed to be able to make your decisions, right? I decided not to have no children. But I have nephews that 29, 14, and 11, and I tell them the same thing. You gotta be prepared to work harder. That you do not have the same rules. You don't. Wish it wasn't so, but that's the way it is right now. And until we right this ship, you need to be prepared that you're gonna have to stay later, that you're gonna have to go in earlier, that you're gonna have to work harder, you're gonna have to produce more, and you're going to be the recipient and the target of 1,000 shots across the bow that are undeserved. That is unfortunate. It's not fair, but I think it still exists.
Yeah, I was wondering if you think it used to be something that polite society didn't talk about and didn't encourage, but in the environment, well, we were talking about it down on the way over, in the environment today with this administration, how hopeful are you that that's going to be eradicated or it's being exacerbated?
I think it's been exacerbated.
Yeah, it's dying.
Yeah.
I think we have, what's great right now is how many allies and how many people who are standing up and saying, no, this is not right. This is not fair. We don't want an America that looks like this, that acts like this. This is not our America. And we want to actively change and speak up in rooms where we see another voice is needed. You see that more and more now, much more than we did when I was coming along.
So we have a hopeful picture.
Yeah, I do. And I
Tiny
think
ripples
Trump
of
has
hope.
helped that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Trump has
Tiny
helped that.
ripples of hope.
But it's actually, to me, it's actually it's forcing us to look at ourselves. It is just not, we're just not changing. This man is showing us that we can be better, that we are better. And most of us are better. I would say 89% of America is better than what he has shown. So what he's doing is elevating the goodness in all of us. And thank God he is, because I think we have a generation of children that are watching and that has to be told, really it doesn't go like this. You don't have to hate your neighbor. You don't have to hate gay, lesbian, or transgender. You do not have to do that. And so I'm grateful in one way that he's shown us what it could be like. But I'm grateful there's enough of us that are fighting against it, like Leah said.
And you know where the hope lies? I know we didn't write this in the book, but when we get our paperback, we're going to write it. The hope lies in the people who are running this year for office.
Yes.
I mean, 1/3.
Yep.
Over a third of the senatorial candidates female. 1/4 of those who are competing this fall for the House of Representatives, women of color. We're going to, Lisa, you are going to be able to have a caucus within the caucus. and 27% of all statewide office holders. So Stacey Abrams will be the first, yes, claim the victory.
Yeah.
But she won't be the last.
Right.
And so there are ripples of hope. And so Dr. King say, in the darkest hour, you're able to see the stars. And so we see it.
Yep.
We see it. And we have a chapter called Dear Sister Candidate, because we wanted to encourage the next generation of young people, old people. Hell, I'm 58 and some change. I was 29 last week for the second time. But we want to encourage everybody to take their seats at the table. And in honor of one of our mentors, Shirley Chisholm from Brooklyn, bring in a folding chair. If you don't see a seat, bring a folding chair. And so this is our moment, and we must seize it. And we have to understand that we are bigger than what the president pronounces every day. We're bigger than that, and we can make this happen. Tuesday, 2 weeks.
Yeah. So what are we doing sitting here? We should be out.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Back on knocking on doors and stuff as soon as we leave.
Oh yeah, we are doing it during this book tour.
One of the themes that runs through your book is mentorship, and which is at every college and every high school, we're supposed to be good mentors, and women historically have not been such great mentors to each other, because there used to be just one spot, and if I got it, I'm keeping it. I'm not looking for competition from you. It's my party. Things have changed, and how is mentorship? Can each of you or any one of you speak to someone who really came into your life and mentored and influenced you and helped you get to where you are today, and or if you've done it with another person?
I think. Go ahead, Yolanda, please.
I was just going to say, I guess my first mentor was my brother-in-law, who was a state representative. But my first mentor in national politics, what I wanted to get into, was Ann Lewis, who worked for Barbara Mikulski at the time, and she's a white Jewish woman. And I've run a business for 30 years, and I hired nothing but young people, and I mentored every single one of them, and I always teach them to give back. In our firm, we always did pro bono work. We always did Christmas time, we collected toys, we did everything. We always gave back, and they have, all of them. You hire these young people, and you're lucky if they stay a couple of years, and you train them well. But they've all gone off and done amazing things. I mean, one of them, they're at the State Department, they're running organizations, they're doing stuff, and they all come back, and we have what we call the Caraway Group alumni. But I tell young people about mentoring, don't always think you're going to get a mentor that looks like you. My first one didn't look like me. I've had male mentors, I've had black male mentors, I've had white male mentors, I've had all kinds of mentors. Find someone that can help you achieve what you want to do, and then try to get that person to mentor you. But don't always think it's going to be somebody that expect. Think out of the box.
I feel like I'm one of the luckiest individuals in the world, because I had a chance to be mentored by not just women who I grew up with in Louisiana, and I consider many of them to still be my friends, but I had the opportunity at a young age to work with Coretta Scott King and Dorothy Height and Shirley Chisholm and Bella Abzug, and just being in Harlem just a week ago, I remember in 1984, I was the lead organizer and advance person for Geraldine Ferraro. After working on the Jackson campaign. It's funny when you tell your students, and I'll see my students tomorrow, during the Christine Blasey Ford hearings, I said, do you know what I was doing 27 years ago? They said, no. And I said, I was helping to organize that event when Eleanor Holmes Norton, Pat Schroeder, Jolene Ansell, Barbara Boxer, Anita Lowy, and Louise Slaughter decided to march across the tarmac to confront Joe and Ted Kennedy to demand Anita Hill get a hearing. I was the organizer. See, that's why I'm still friends with Joe Biden. So I mentor so many kids. Well, Leah said that she's not a mother, but I'm a professional aunt, no kids. Didn't we say that in the book, Pink?
Professional aunts, no kids.
No kids. And I have, in addition to my 19 nieces and nephews, I have about 300 children, different daddies, of course.
I know you're Superwoman, but cripes. It is 4:59, and Kathy's giving me this. I'm supposed to take questions for a few minutes, 3 or 4 questions, so that we can let these women have to get back on a train and continue to do God's work, helping to elect Democrats.
And Kathy's one of my mentors, and Robin Sproul, who was the bureau chief ABC for almost 30 years. Well, she's one of my mentors too. How you think I got on TV? Snap, snap.
So, question, Katie.
My question is, what political and fiscal advice would you specifically have for young Black women in the millennial generations and under who have aspirations of running for local office in the future in today's climate?
Buy the book.
Read chapter 25. It's all laid out.
Yeah.
There's a chapter that says, that's Dear Sister Candidate, that talks about, that actually offers advice to women who are going into public service and public office, and we're really specific, but Minyon, what were you going to add?
The book's right outside, you can buy.
Yeah, no, but
right after this.
If you are really interested in running, you have to know your own fortitude, because a lot of people have that desire, especially after they hear speeches and this year is the year of the woman, but I think the first thing you have to do is know your own internal compass, because politics are brutal. In politics, you will think you have friends that you don't have friends after you get in this race. So you've got to understand that you really want to do this. And then I would say let preparation be your friend. Because sometimes we wake up and we decide, oh, I want to run for office. And then all of a sudden you're announcing you're running for office and there's no preparation. Most times you lose. But the fact is you can win if you just prepare. And so chapter 25 will help you prepare, but know yourself before you even prepare.
I'm excited that you want to get involved.
too.
Find a candidate, find a campaign that's happening now. The last 2 weeks of a campaign is really dynamic.
Yeah.
And if you get an assignment, they say, well, they want me to go and stand at a grocery store. Go and stand at a grocery store.
Because you'll be doing that as a candidate.
Yeah, and you know, so really, this is a great time to find somebody that inspires you, that somebody that, you know, really, you know, motivates you, and get involved. We need more people to run.
Yes.
Again, I tell my young students, I say, why you? Because there's no one better, and why now? Because tomorrow's not soon enough. It's your turn. What are you waiting for? You got permission? We just gave it to you. Go.
And there's nothing better than a campaign. When you
Right.
are in the campaign, you see the people that you work with on that staff more than you see your spouses or your mother or your father,
right.
your brother or sister. And there's such a camaraderie and such goodwill that those friends are yours for the
life.
Mary and Kelly can never get away from us, you know, and Sue Canning, I mean, and Sonny, they're there forever. So it's, and one other thing I would add, I don't have my book yet, but is that when you're running, you have to know what you're willing to lose over.
That's right.
That's, I think, is the very first bit of advice. Know what you're willing to lose over.
That's a good.
And I think if you want an example, I think we all agree to follow Stacey Abrams' campaign. She had a plan.
Yeah.
She had
She
an
did.
excellent plan, one of the best plans we've ever seen. So if you're really interested, study their campaign.
That will be a good study. Next
Katie?
question.
Where to go? Do we have a question?
There's a young woman over here.
Oh, that's plenty.
There plenty
Over
more.
there.
Over there.
It's right there.
You may not even need a mic.
Stand up, Oprah.
And identify yourself, please.
My name's Alex. I'm a senior public policy and French double major here at the university. My question kind of revolves around my plan to move to DC after I graduate. I just wanted to know what I, as a white woman, can do to advocate and be an ally for my black sisters who will be going through a similar, you know, sort of experience to me.
Don't lose your friends, because when you move to DC, they say get a dog, you need some friends. That's number one. Number two, there are so many opportunities to serve in Washington, DC, and we need you to come. There's a great opportunity to network. After hours is the best hour in Washington, DC. I didn't have any money when I first came to Washington, DC, but I had a notebook full of friends, and we would all gather on 19th and L, because they had $1 chicken wings and 50 cents rail drinks. And that's all we could afford until we had those little congressional receptions. So yes, also during your free time, volunteer with one of the civil rights groups. They're doing amazing work. Whether it's felony disenfranchisement, they're working on criminal justice reform, they're working on income inequality, climate change. There's so many things you can do. Besides, we're listed. This woman here can cook, I can cook, and you might get invited to one of our dinners. So be prepared.
But you know,
I
I want to just say one other thing too,
Yeah.
because I think we're in this very awkward period. You know, 53% of the white women voted for Trump. Then you got the 47% that didn't. But the truth is, you stood up and asked a very, very basic but a coalition building question, which is, to me, you're a colored girl, okay? Let me start there. Let me start.
Oh yeah, baby.
But what I want to tell you is, you know, okay, so we kind of know who we are, but we also need to know who you are, because we got to figure out what's driving that 53% too. So you have to help us while we're helping you. But I believe just the foundation of your question, wanting to come to Washington to build allies with black women, brown women, I think right now you're ahead of the game. And you can almost go anywhere in DC and bump into a black woman, a brown woman, and a white woman, and you'll have a coalition, trust me.
19th and L, you'll run into me. So, yeah.
And if you like chicken, find her.
You should tell about your dinners. You talked about hosting the dinner.
Yeah.
But what about your dinners?
So we started having these dinners. It was during the 2004 campaign. 2004 campaign, and we were all being invited to these salon dinners around DC. And, we looked at each other one day, we were, complaining about it. It's like, so-and-so invited us, and you get there and you're the only person of color, and sometimes you're the only woman. It's like, so we said, why are we going to other people's dinners? We should have our own dinners. So we began having dinners with the presidential candidates, anybody who was running for office or who thought they might want to run for office. And we would have them for dinner. We had 3 rules: no staff, they pay, and no press, all off the record. And we've never talked about them until this book. And they were really an opportunity for us to listen to the candidates, to kind of understand how they were thinking about issues, what their approach was going to be, the level of their preparedness. Donna's question was always, what's your 2168 strategy? And if they didn't know what that meant,
They gave you a blank stare.
if they give you the blank stare, you're like,
No dessert.
Right.
2168 is the number of delegates you need to get the nomination.
Right.
And if they didn't know that, then it's like, okay, check. But they were also opportunities because at some of the dinners we brought other women. And it was an opportunity for for the candidates to meet women who could connect them to other communities.
Right, that's right.
So not that it was for an endorsement, but if you come into Brooklyn and you're doing a campaign, then you ought to call me because I can tell you who to reach out to that might endorse you, but that would at least expose the voters to your ideas. And so we wanted them to step away or to make room for not the usual pollsters, not the usual message gurus, but to meet a whole new network of folks. So we started having these dinners, and they were a boatload of fun. We talk about them in detail in the book, but they were fun. Some of them were not fun. Some of them were snore, but a lot of them was. Chris Dodd was like the best dinner
we love
ever.
Chris.
And
Yeah,
we shut the
closed the
restaurant
restaurant.
down with
We
him.
did.
It
We
was
closed
fun.
the restaurant. They
You
locked up
close
all
it
their
you close it
liquor.
all by yourself, kid. I've been there with you.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Next question. Over there? Okay. Come on.
Hi, I was going to ask about, the younger generation in the DNC. You were talking about how, some Black females enter later in life, but are you guys doing anything to, integrate the younger generation, and, how are the older and younger generations working together to accomplish, the main goals of the DNC?
Well, we have several Black women over at the DNC in key positions. Amanda Brown Learman, she got married. She is now the political director. That's a position. Who held the political director position at the DNC? Okay. And we also have, Kenya Clayton. She works with all of the constituencies. Patrice Taylor is the director of party affairs. So we need more. It's not as diverse as we want it to be, but we at least have women at the table, and I'm proud of that. And we need to, we only have a handful of Black women who are party chair. My home state has a Black woman as a party chair. DC has a party chair. We need more Black women in the pipeline. We need more Hispanic women. Damn it, we need more women, period, in the pipeline. So we have a lot of work to do, but that work is already underway, not just with women of color, but other young women who make up the bulk of the DNC staff, right? The DNC is over 50% female, but making sure that women have seats at the table and leadership role that can get directly to the chair, that is what we're here for. We're here to push, we're here to challenge, but we're also here to support and nurture those women who are at the table.
But I don't think that the DNC is the end and the beginning of how you get involved in politics. It just happens to be the most pronounced because you probably see names that you recognize, but there are local people here that if you're not involved in some of the local campaigns where you can really get the best experience. I tell people all the time, I started with Harold Washington. I marched myself down to his office thinking I asked the same question. Who's organizing the young people? I wanted to organize young people from college, and so me and 3 or 4 of my friends, it was actually 100 of us, but me and 3 or 4 of my friends, we decided to go down to the campaign. We raised the question, and they looked at us and said, oh, y'all can go over in this, y'all can have this space over there. So we became the youth organizers. There's no myth or a mystical way to get involved in campaigns. It just has to be the will, and you just have to have the fortitude to go. But I would start local, because that's some of the best campaigns to
And
me.
it's fun.
Yeah.
You start local and you volunteer.
Yeah.
And I think that the DNC is probably the toughest nut to crack because of all of the institutional structures and strictures, and it's a challenge. And so when you start, many of the women, probably all of the women who are running for office now are doing so who got into it without the support of the DNC.
Oh, that's right.
Right, because they saw the need, they had the desire, they had the zeal, and they stepped out there and began to run a race. And they've had challenges along the way. And Andrew Gillum, he's obviously not a woman, but he had those same challenges, and he's on his path to become the governor of Florida. He did not have the institutional party structure supporting him, but he was able, like Stacey, to craft a new way to identify and mobilize voters and to become the nominee. And those people, I contend that the folks who are running now without the institutional support are going to change the party from the outside in and make the path easier for those who are coming behind them by changing the way the party, the formal party structure operates, opening the doors wider and making the path easier for those who are coming.
They're the outside women. We have time for one more question. Beg your pardon?
Hi. Hi, my name is Carol King Reese, and I'm a parent and a concerned citizen. And I feel like the fabric of our democracy is being stretched and worn in different ways that are at sometimes scary. And I just wanted to know what you ladies thought of how we could repair this, because nobody can make fabric work the way it should like women can. So how can we repair the fabric of our democracy?
First of all, we got to vote November 6th.
That's exactly.
I'd say to people all the time, I wish we would stop looking at voting like it's an event and look at it like it's a lifestyle, because we have a lot of work to do, just like you just said. Our country is being torn apart. But the only way that we can make change is if we go to that ballot box, because right now they have the Congress, they have the Supreme Court, and they have the White House. There are no co-equal branches of government, so we are getting the fabric of who they are. And until we change that, then we are going to still see this erosion. But I must tell you, I am heartened by the fact that I see so many local organizations that are just taking control of their own lives now, and they're investing in their own communities, because that's what they've had to do. They've been forced to do it. But if we don't vote on November 6th and we wake up with this same outcome, I'm almost afraid to tell you what we should expect these last 2 years, because it has been pretty draconian.
We have to restore trust in our public institutions. Every major democratic institution in our society is now under attack. When you see the president attacking the media, that is an attack on our democracy. They are protected by the First Amendment. When you see the attacks on our norms, when you see the attacks on individual character, so the only way to stitch this back together is to restore trust. It is to build these institutions back up, and we all have to become participants in our society. We can no longer function as a democracy where only a quarter of the people vote in primaries, 40% in midterm election, and just about short of 56% in presidential races. The fact that we leave so much of our power in the back room and not bring it out and vote, that's a problem. But we have to restore trust in our institutions, and we also have to return to civility.
Yes.
I have many friends on the right. I was just on the plane with Hugh Hewitt. I told him I prayed for him. He probably was shocked. I don't want this plane to go down with me and you.
Somebody's going to be a other.
Yeah.
Donna Brazile and others?
No, Hugh and other. No, bottom line is, I have friends on both sides of the aisle. I love the fact that my Rolodex, or my whatever you call it now, my iPhone is filled with people. Yes, can I call Condoleezza Rice? I remember when Minyon and I went over to her house to have dinner with Cicely Tyson, and we got in the hallway and we're like, what's that? That's chicken. That's cornbread. She can cook. We were so, and then she played the piano. I mean, come on, we gotta stop treating people with disrespect. I've learned so much in my political life from listening to people who I disagree with. Didn't hate them, and by the way, the best cocktail in America at 5 o'clock, George Will's house. If George Will used to quote, he used to quote Madison and Jefferson. I said, what about Tupac? Can we get some, I mean, but so the way we bring it together, we have to continue to have forums like this. We got to trust one another. We got to believe that the people of this country have our best, our best interests at heart. And I don't want to say that Donald Trump is a symptom of a larger disease. I really do think that Donald Trump is an anomaly, but God, we're going through a hell of a lot with him. But we can overcome it if we vote and if we believe in one another.
Did you want to, Leah, did you want to say? Okay, it's 5:17. This is very un-Biden-like. I'm only 2 minutes over.
We got,
I
what?
just want you to...
This young lady, she
all right.
raise her hand. I saw you, lady. I saw your sister.
Is it working? Hello? Okay.
Yes.
Hello. My name is Ariba Khan. I'm a sophomore majoring in international relations and public health on the pre-law track. First, I would like to thank all 5 of you for your courageous and everything that you've done, and I really appreciate and look up to you as my role model, so thank you.
Thank you.
Being a Muslim woman who is interested in public service and who would like to run for office one day, my fear is that my appearance or my hijab will prevent me from achieving my dreams. I'm afraid that my fellow Americans won't see me for my accomplishments, my ambitions, or the fact that I would like to make America even greater than it already is. What would you recommend to me, a Muslim woman who is going to face barriers and stigmas along her journey, and how to overcome them? Thank you.
Great question.
What a beautiful question.
Leah?
I think your question already reflects some of the answer. So one is the acknowledgement that you're going to have a different path, and that's okay. This country was built by people who took different paths and who faced obstacles, and some of us are still facing obstacles. So having that knowledge helps to prepare you in a way for for the road ahead. It's changing somewhat. You have Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, who's going to be our first Somali member of Congress, who her hair is covered. And you have other Muslims in Congress, Andre Carson and Keith Ellison, who will be there when you get there. Hopefully, you got a little while before you can run, but I think they'll be hanging around. The obstacles come to make us stronger, right? Nothing grows without the push, without the struggle. So get out there, don't be afraid, and don't shy away from your difference. Your difference is part of the fabric of America.
That's right on.
The way that you celebrate your faith is part of what makes America, America. So own it, embrace it, talk about it.
Yeah.
It's who you are.
Yep.
And when you shrink from it, then we shrink from it.
Right.
When you're not proud of it, then we wonder why you aren't proud of who you are. But all of that, where you came from, where you dress, how you worship, makes you the candidate that is the difference maker in people's lives. And that's what people want. What we really want to know is, who are you?
That's right.
What can we respect about you? Do you care about the same things I care about? And the rest fades away. So I want to encourage you, run, girl.
Right.
Run.
Run, girl.
Yeah.
Run. And if you decide you're not running for public office, but you want to run a corporation, run that.
Right.
If you want to be on a school board, do that. If you want to teach, do that. Whatever it is that you want to do, that you feel called to do, to make change in this country, do it, and do it with everything you have, and proudly wear your hijab, proudly kneel to pray, whatever it is that makes you, you be you.
Be you.
God bless.
Yeah.
Okay. To bring this to a conclusion, I know that you are each still fighting for the soul of our
Yes.
country. We have Charlottesville, Flint, DACA. I mean, we've got lots of stuff, and you're in there slugging every day. So I would ask you, please, to continue to live the promise and the belief that you said in your book, which is that you believe in a second chance God.
Yes.
And God knows we need a second chance, and we need a second chance to hail you, celebrate you, applaud you, and thank you for making us a little bit better and for continuing to lead our nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Praise the
God
Lord.
bless.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Biden
Now,
Institute.